This week on the Ocean Cruises podcast, I'm having a chat with Colin and Jamie from the YouTube sailing channel Parlay Revival and Colin from the TV show on Bravo called Below Deck. Colin and Jamie are both sailing around the Pacific at the moment on a Lagoon 450, which they refit extensively after being damaged by Hurricane Irma. If you want to come sailing with Colin and Jamie, they're both going to be skippers at the Odyssey Sailing Festival in the BVI's in December of this year. Check out theoceancruises.com/Odyssey for tickets. If you want to follow along with our journey, you can check out some of our recent refit videos which we've put on this channel. We're about to get in the water in a couple of weeks, but for now, enjoy the chat with Colin and Jamie.
Never done one of these.
Right, I've already had about 3 or 4 today. Cheers. Right, cool. So what did you do before Parlay? Like, what job did you have?
Right before Parlay, I was working in remote communities, and then in Australia, up in the Northern Territory. And then I was like, stuff this, I want to get into yachting. So I went and did a few courses about going into yachting, and then I was traveling South America, and then I was going to go to get a job, and Colin advertised on one of the yachting sites on Facebook saying he was looking for crew. Like, this was 5 years ago. And I was like, oh, that sounds all right, because he said, like, he was an engineer, he's been in the super yacht game for like 10 years. And I was like, if I go on the boat for a month or something, he might be able to hook me up with a job on a super yacht. So I did that, and more or less been here for been here for 5 years, more or less, on and off.
Never stepped foot on a super yacht.
Yeah. I was going to say, just got a non-job on a catamaran instead.
yeah. But no, so that's how I fell into this. And then I loved the project, stayed by it.
So what were you doing in the Northern Territories? You were doing community work. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, like building houses and that for the local people. So it's like a government organisation.
Yeah.
So you go out for so long, like 4 weeks on, 1 week off. And it just goes, you fly in and out of like islands, like into the desert, wherever. But there's a lot of work that goes on.
So that's like for the indigenous people in Australia or indigenous tribes or something like that?
Yeah, more or less. So some of the
originaries.
Some of the communities have 500 people. So it's from a community from like, say, 500 up to 1,500. And you go there, and then they work with you through a program and stuff like that.
Right.
So
that's really nice.
I have gone back a couple of times since I've been on Parlay. It's quite good money, to be honest, and fast. So that's what I was doing, but got over it pretty quick.
So how long did you do that for?
That was for probably before I come on the boat, maybe 1 or 2 years. And before that, I was a butcher, had some butcher shops. Right.
Nice. Okay. So you said like somebody gave you a hint of working in the super yacht industry. Like, how did that tickle your fancy?
No, I never stepped foot on a super yacht. So I always liked the boating idea. And then I thought I might try and get into it. After being out bush, I was over it. So this is how I got into it. I just did a couple of courses and then didn't even need my tickets for anything. Never used any of it.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. I'm sure it'll come in handy. Well, it'll come in handy. You need your tickets actually for the BVI, so it will have come in handy.
Yeah.
So that's what it was for. All right, that's cool. Right, Colin, you've been an engineer on super yachts for 10 years before you got Parlay. That's right.
Yeah, about that.
Yeah. And how did you get into that industry? Did you do like marine engineering at school, or did you fall into it?
I did mechanical engineering at university.
Nice.
And then all of my mates that I did uni with went into like office jobs, suit and tie, working their way up this ladder. I went and did a couple of ski seasons, one in Aspen, Colorado, and then one back home in Queenstown. And then just one of my mates started working on super yachts. And at that time, he was getting 3,000 British pounds per month, all tax free. It's all international waters and all that kind of stuff. And I was just
nice.
heard of it before. So I started to pursue that a little bit. I moved to Australia, started working on some sailing boats there. And then got my first job in like 2009 in the Med in where was I? In Nice, south of France.
Oh, nice.
And worked my way up really quickly because they acknowledged my degree. So I only needed like a quarter of the seat time of everyone else that was going the engineering route. I was like 26 and a chief engineer on like a 40-meter yacht. So I was pretty lucky in that regard.
You know, like just in terms of like understanding a bit more about the industry, how do you go from working on like sailboats or like bigger charter boats, like a 30 or a 40-meter boat where like the engineering system is it's just a bigger version of what you get on a normal boat. You've just got a big engine, you've got a fairly standard electrical system. How would you go from working on boats like that to then working on, you know, something like Parsifal 3, which you're on now at some point, or you have been in the past, where, you know, just completely wild? Like, it's a huge jump.
Yeah, it is. Yes and no. Like the systems on a 30-meter yacht are all the same on a 56, relatively the same, but just to a larger scale. Like the hydraulic systems are just huge, and a lot of the stuff you'll actually have to get contractors in anyway to do the work, because it's just for insurance and all that kind of stuff. You can't go putting the engine apart often on your own. You'll have to get the contractors in, so it's still under warranty and stuff like that. So it's almost easier working on a bigger yacht. There's just more paperwork, more safety, more permissions and all of that kind of stuff. I think you got your work cut out for you more if you're like in the 30-meter range and you're like a sole engineer. Everything from a light bulb to the Wi-Fi to the stabilizers you're in charge of. So it's a lot of responsibility. But if you go up into the 50, 60, 70-meter range, you got a second engineer, sometimes even a third engineer. It's actually easier, I think, to work on a bigger yacht.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're just like calling the people who are providing like the warranty and the service if anything's going seriously wrong, which makes sense, because I can't imagine a super yacht would just be like, oh, let's hire an engineer and take that engine apart that's worth like 200 grand. Like, it'd be a bit stupid if they did that. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. We just filmed a season of Below Deck last year where the engine had a total failure. It filled up with water, and there's only one engine on Parsifal 3. So I had to do some real cowboy stuff to get that going, but I had to get like written permission from the owner. I wasn't going to go near it until the owner said, I give you permission to try salvage that engine, because there was a good chance it would blow up. It was full of salt water, and we don't know how long it was full of salt water for. So I ended up pumping all the water out of the engine and filling it up with diesel and flushing it all through. And it was wild, but you'd never dream of doing that if it wasn't, unless that was a TV show scenario where we had to go and get that boat running, or it was millions and millions of dollars that were going to be lost. So
I mean, that would have been the season over.
100%.
How did that happen? So the actual engine block filled up with salt water?
Full.
Or was it a gasket?
The aftercooler,
what
cools the air down going into the engine, that had like it must have been a pinhole, because they had to pressure test it and they saw some bubbles coming out of it. But it sat at the dock for like just over a week. It just slowly filled up the engine. It's something that you'd never dream of was actually happening. So we started filming, and on the first day that I'm on the boat, I couldn't start it. And then I wasted like 24 hours troubleshooting the starter motor system. It was hydrolocked, but I thought the starter motor was cooked. So I wasted like a whole day going down the wrong path. Replaced the starter motor and checked all the wiring and everything for the battery cables, and it wasn't that.
It was just filled with salt water.
It was full, and it was hydro-locked. So, it was the last thing on my mind that I thought would be happening.
Well, yeah, I mean, you wouldn't think, especially like when from the outside it looks so perfect. Like everything looks fine. Have they not got like sensors or anything that can like tell you the viscosity of the fluid in the engine or the temperatures? Or I just thought they'd be hooked up with all types of sensors, those engines.
they'd just done a passage from, I think, Spain to Italy where we filmed, and everything was perfect. So you shut the engine down, you literally turn all power off to the engine. And it wasn't until I fire it up that she was locked up. So yeah, no, there's not something that's just continuously monitoring an engine. It's the same as your boat. If it's off, it's off.
Like, considering the price of those engines, like I'd have thought they probably had a little bit more technology in them to like prevent that type of stuff happening.
You know, and you know how they say, if it's not broken, don't touch it. That actually was the case. The engine was working okay, but they just wanted to get a few things serviced. So they sent that aftercooler out to get serviced. So when they cleaned it and they tested it and all of that, and then transported it back to the boat, that's probably when it had failed, rather than if they had just left it. That they didn't do anything wrong, as in the boat, Captain Glenn, or the engineers or anyone. But if they hadn't touched it, it probably wouldn't have leaked. But it is part of the scheduled maintenance to do that stuff. So it's just one of those things.
Well, good on you, mate. You just saved someone a few million quid by saving that engine. Did he send you like a case of beers or a bottle of something as a thank you for that?
No, nothing. But I got a lot of praise out of it. The engineers are normally behind the scenes, so it actually featured in a few episodes on TV. So I guess that was my recognition for what was going on behind the scenes. Normally, I think it's the first time ever that like any real engineering things have been shown on that show. And they've done, I think they've done 26 or 28 seasons of this show, but the engineers are normally behind the scenes. So I'm passable. I think it's because it's small. The sailboat version is smaller than the motor yacht version. So I can't really hide out of all of the shots. I don't have my own space, so to speak. So they have to show the engineer on the show. Whereas on the motor yachts, they can, they got a big control room, big crew area. They can be out of all of the action, the TV action. But there's plenty of engineering action going on, but no one's filming it.
Mate, if they filmed just the engineering action, I'd watch that every week. I swear. If
That's
it was just really, like I would. If it was just that, mate. Even if it was reality TV with just engineers in the engineering room, I'd probably watch that as well. Actually, I'm really interested in that. That'd be quite cool.
Yeah.
So, right, Jamie, I'll go back to you. So, your sailing experience prior to seeing this message off Colin was zero, I think.
Yeah, I never had any experience on a sailing boat. Didn't know how anything worked or anything. So he was in Martinique, and I think I was in Colombia or something. And I flew from there to Martinique, and that was the first time I ever got on a sailboat. So when we left Martinique, I didn't know which way we were going or how it was working or anything.
Looking out the back.
Which way does it go? Which way's forward?
When I first got there, we had to tension the rigging. So the first 2 days I think I was there, we're up the mast for 2 days trying to undo all the rigging and tightening it and fixing it all up. So I was just swinging up there for a couple of days, my first few days.
Bloody hell, he threw you in at the deep end. You just get a greenhorn in and just send them straight up the rig.
Is this going to hold my weight? Yeah, you'll be fine. Get up there.
Yeah. We're both up there too.
At what point? So, obviously, like you sacked off the work that you were doing in the Northern Territories in Australia, and then you went over to South America. At what point were you like, okay, I want to do this as like a permanent thing for my life? I mean, you're doing boat work for a long time before you even got out there.
Yeah, I was over it in Australia, and when I was traveling, I wanted to find something more traveling and working at the same time, like to balance that lifestyle. And this is a project I found, and it just fits everything.
Ticks all the boxes.
Yeah, and like super yachts, like we're speaking with Colin and that, it's like more, you got to be dressed properly, you got to be polite. You know what I mean?
Like wear a shirt.
You need to wear a shirt, shoes. You got to be up at 7 o'clock in the morning, and then you might not go to bed till 10 at night. And he said
that's what put you off.
No, but he said like
wants to be in bed by 10.
He more or less said like, I don't think it's going to fit. Like, go for it if you want, but I don't think you think like if you get a bad captain and then you bad owner, it's like so strict and you're restricted everything, and like you might work 7 days a week for 2 months while the owners are on, and it's like a nightmare. He goes, and when I work out bush, I can go, or out in the remote communities, I can come and go whenever I like. So,
out bush, mate.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I'm out in the bush.
Yeah.
I think the bush is more suited for you than super yachts, mate. I don't know you that
Yeah,
well.
Yeah.
That's
more or less like that's how Colin let me down with it. He's like, oh, come on, what do you think?
Right, okay.
Old salty sailor's better for you.
Yeah, probably saved you a lot of hard work there then. Right, Colin, when did you start actually sailing and getting on the water?
When I was 16, I bought a Hobie Cat with a good friend of mine, and hadn't really sailed much before that, but just fell in love with it. It was so fun. We went down to Auckland Harbour there, and obviously a Hobie Cat's got no engine, so we just didn't know what we were doing. Just sail out into the middle of the harbour, run out of wind, and there'd be big cruise liners coming into the harbour and stuff, like the big womp womp. Like, it was just so fun. And fell in love with it. So my first job on a boat was on a sailing boat in the Great Barrier Reef with Sunday Islands.
Oh, nice.
And unfortunately, after that year, I did probably 10 years on motor yachts. So I wasn't doing a lot of like sailing on for work. I was doing it recreationally, but ended up on motor yachts, which is a better gig for an engineer. There's more space. Everything's just more. There's just more. A sailboat's tight. It's like any sailboat, storage is a problem and access is a problem. On a motor yacht, you can just stand up and work on the engine. So, different ball game. So I'm not unhappy that I wasn't working on sailboats, but Parsifal 3 was my first proper sailing super yacht gig.
Oh, nice. Oh, that's pretty cool. All right. So you had the Hobie Cat when you were younger. You got that with your mate, and then so I take it you were working on the super yachts before you got Parlay, before you started cruising yourself.
Yeah, so Hurricane Irma came through at the end of 2017. I signed the papers for this boat January 2018.
Yeah.
That was crazy. When I think back on how that all unfolded and what happened and the risk that I took and everything, it just feels like, I don't know, mate, it was just destined to be, because if you thought about it logically, it made no sense.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I just had this something telling me, my instinct was telling me this is going to be fun. This is going to be good. And so I went for it. But it was nuts. The boat had sunken on the port side.
It was nuts, man. Like, looking at those photos you sent.
Literally everyone I spoke to was like, don't buy that boat. Like, that's too much work. And I still didn't listen. I don't know what was going through my head, but against everyone else's better judgment, I bought it, and it was a lot of work.
It was a lot of work. Did you have much? It's like, I mean, so you're pretty handy because you're an engineer, obviously. But did you have any experience like refitting boats or doing like fiberglass or core work or anything like that before?
Nothing. I mean, I've fixed a few dings and a couple of surfboards. That was about it with fiberglass.
Right. Okay.
But my motto in life or whatever, it's always been to like just seek help when you need it, or just don't try to tackle something that's a little bit beyond you. Always get the right advice and then go for it. So I made friends with Idrit, a guy who owns BVI Yacht Painters, and he's the best fiberglasser in Tortola. And, just bought him a few beers after work every day and just picked his brain bit by bit, and then became friends with him. And then in the end, he was coming on for daily inspections on my work on Parlay.
Nice.
And that was that was priceless, to do a day's work and have him come and he was ruthless. He'd be like, no, rip all that back off. I can see some air bubble. That looks a bit white. Like, pull it off. And it'd be demoralizing at times, but at least I knew I was doing it right with my friend Ben as well. He had actually done some fiberglass work on pools, some fiberglass pool stuff.
Okay.
But it's, and we've always, when we don't know how to do something, we try to ask an expert, and we don't really need them to show us exactly how to do it, but just to get the right advice is really important, I think. It's the same with the rigging. We just replaced all of our rigging. We did it on our own, but under the guidance of the owner of Selden Shipyards, so Selden Mast. So you can't get much better advice than that. But yeah, so that's who I want on the boat at the festival is Jonas.
Yeah, I noticed. That's when you said it's Jonas, I was like, okay, and then I saw the email address. I was like, oh right, okay, that's an interesting one. Ask him a few questions.
Yeah, no, and he's he's we're partners with them, but he's the biggest asset that he provides us is his knowledge. And he'll tell you that himself. What he knows, we'll never learn in a lifetime.
But he's probably forgot more than you'd ever learn as well. Like people who've done that type of stuff. It's just I found like the biggest help because I took on a pretty big project here. It wasn't as big as your project. It wasn't upside down in the water or anything like that. But it had been on the hard for like 3 years, and the previous owners had just more or less like abandoned it. So there's been a lot of new stuff to do, and I found that the best advice you can get is speaking to people, asking them questions about exactly which materials and which tools are right for the job. Because like an engineer who's got experience on that particular engine, they can be like, "Oh, you're wasting your time. Just do this. It's a 2-minute fix. That'd save you a load of time." And when it's come to like the fiberglass and the painting stuff, just advice like, "No, use this type of thinner. It's better." Or if it's hotter, like try this type, you'll get a better chemical reaction out of it, or something like that. And that's priceless because you can't find that on the internet.
Just one tiny word of advice from an expert can save you days and days of labor, or or using the right tool for the job. So we had put probably 100 meters of biaxial glass into this boat, and then Total Boat sent us that package, and it had electric shares in it. And so we'd just cut through 100 meters of fiberglass, and the scissors get blunt. A lot of small little patches, a lot of cutting, and these shares came. You just press this button and you just cut through it like butter.
Oh yeah,
like if we had that 6 months ago, holy shit,
it would have saved weeks.
A lot of times we needed a lot of different tools. Because when we're in Guatemala, we couldn't get a lot of the right tools either, so we had to do what we had.
Yeah, I've always like followed a rule whenever it's come to like this boat or my previous one. It's like if there's a specialist tool that you need for a job, like just buy it and just keep it on the boat, because like just having access to like good quality tools as well is priceless.
But that's when you're in Guatemala. Like Rio Dulce doesn't have much, and like in Panama, Linton Bay Marina is like 2 hours from the city, so you don't want to go to town just to grab one tool. So you try and work it out how you can get it done.
Unless you're David Shee.
Unless you're Dave Shee, he just drives around Panama all day.
David Shee. It's a little hero, that guy.
He had a damaged 450 as well, but any excuse that he could do the 2.5 hour drive into Panama City and come back to pick up a bloody paintbrush, he'd be doing it because it was so much better than fiberglass work.
Fair enough. Like I would probably agree with that as well, actually. 5-hour trip. Yeah. I think I'd take a few drives to Athens before sanding this boat again for sure.
Yeah.
So that would be cool to talk about I suppose like the activism that went on in a way a little bit, because I watched those videos when you were releasing them, because I like boat refit videos. That's my type of thing. You like really pushed hard on the manufacture of that boat, and you got some good results for a lot of the owners who also had some pretty damaged boats, like with the bulkhead situation and all that. Yeah,
there was rough times. There's a lot of hate and love in between that. Yeah, it was definitely not all pretty on Colin's side, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It was, we didn't go after Lagoon. We were just making these videos about our repairs, and it just became apparent. You can watch the videos and see us going from, oh man, this sucks, like how did this happen to us, to it being like, hang on a minute, this may not be the best design. And so the videos, were changing, and you know, a lot of Lagoon 450 owners were watching and started checking their bulkheads, which no one would have done because you have to rip the cabin apart to see the bulkhead.
Yeah.
So they started inspecting them, and all of a sudden there's like 200 boats with the same thing. And that's when it was like, shit, there's a serious problem here. And to Lagoon's credit, they stepped up to the mark eventually. They obviously didn't appreciate our videos at all, and I don't blame them.
I don't think they did.
Kind of publicity, you know. Yeah, so it was a strained relationship between us and Lagoon for a long time. And now, you know, if you've got a damaged Lagoon 450 with the bulkhead issue, they pay for the reinforcement kit. So it's a stainless steel plate. You know, whether you agree with that being the ultimate fix or not, the jury's out on that, but we're not experts, so I don't know. The experts in the field are saying that's all it needs. So I think a lot of Lagoon 450 owners are just trusting that, but I'm glad that we did it the way we did it. But our boat was way more damaged because of Hurricane Irma than your average private boat or charter boat. So it was a pretty rough time. I lost a lot of sleep over it, you know, owners, and because we dropped the value of the Lagoon 450 or maybe even Lagoons in general for quite some time. And a few owners that were selling their boats really didn't appreciate that.
They were the main ones that were cracking up about it. It was the owners like, you fraud, you're like just trying to do this for more views and things like that.
Yeah, that's terrible. Like, that's such a stupid accusation. Like, it's not, you're not, the truth is like right there, isn't it? You're showing people what's going on inside the boat. It's not like you're making it up.
Some of those big haters at the start were people that were sending emails, 3 months later, like, look, sorry, thank you for like looking after us. Like, you had a family on a Lagoon 450 and we could have, something really bad could have happened. So, and some of them were the really bad haters at the start, like we're just commenting on everything, sending emails and like, you're full of shit, you're not talking to Lagoon direct, and we were at the time. So yeah, in the end, a lot of people come back to us and said thank you.
Oh, well, good on them for like turning that around and doing the right thing and saying thanks, I suppose. Yeah, that's all right.
But then a couple did a bit of dodges, like, but were our friends at the start and then bought the Lagoon and then tried to sell it off saying there's nothing wrong with it. So there's a bit mixed emotions there for a long time.
Yeah. You know, there's always stuff with boats, like no matter what boat it is, like you could go and get an Oyster, like Amel, like the new Amels have got issues. There's two Amel 55s in this yard here, and both owners are complaining about the same, I think some issues with like the steering systems, and then there's like a couple of bulkhead issues that they're talking about, and they're talking to Amel about it. So like all boats have got it. I mean, none of them are perfect, and they're all different. Like every 6 years, they completely remake, you know, a new boat in a way. So you're always going to get new issues that are popping up. I think it's just if they do the right thing and improve on them, that's the important thing.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. We've had boats come up to us that want some advice or want to show us their issues, and it'll be a Fontaine Peugeot or a Leopard, like boats. There was literally a boat with broken bulkheads in Linton Bay where we were, which was a 48-foot Fontaine Peugeot. Right. Not to throw it under the bus, just to generalize that all boats have issues exactly like you're saying.
Yeah. I think in particular with catamarans as well. I mean, it's obvious, like if you look at the shape of them, like they are, you know, meant to do this to a certain extent. It's just how much can they do that before it just like snaps. All stuff just starts breaking.
Shape. You know, the you know, we've seen the finite element. What is it? Finite element analysis, the FEA charts and stuff, all the stresses and where the stresses are and what they do to alleviate those stresses. And it's a very, very complicated thing because these boats don't heal over. So when they're overloaded, something wants to give. Whether it does or not is a different story, but there's a lot of force on one particular area, whereas your boat will just heal right over. That's your indication to be like, shit, I should be reefed right now. And you know, there's a lot to be said for that. We don't have that. And things break.
Yeah, it's always a compromise depending on the boat. Right. So just going back to like buying Parlay, were you in the market for like a non-hurricane damaged boat? Or were you just like, I want a ridiculous challenge here?
Not a ridiculous challenge. I wanted a ridiculous price.
Right, fair enough. Okay.
Yeah. I'd done 10 years or so on super yachts and had a fair amount saved up, but not enough to buy one of these brand new or used, undamaged. So Parlay would have been worth probably 450 grand at the time. And this is public knowledge. I got it for about 150. So it was a fraction of the price, but I've probably put in about $1 million. It feels like $1 million.
Definitely $1 million hours. Definitely $1 million hours.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Good investment.
Yeah, good investment for sure. Yeah. When you bought it, were you aware of like the extent of the work? Because you'd never done it before. It was a completely new thing for you.
I don't think anyone that buys any boat is ready for amount of work.
There's always a surprise. Yeah,
even a brand new one. Like,
so this is a funny story. It's not very funny, but this is a story. The owner.
It's a story.
Yeah, the owner of this boat, his name's Bob. He's become a good friend of ours. He went out and bought another boat after this one got so damaged, and within like a couple of months of him buying it, he thought he had bulkhead problems on his new boat. And he was
the 52.
He's like, how is this even possible? Like, how does someone have this much bad luck? And they opened it all up, and it just was superficial stuff, just some gel coat cracks and whatnot. This is on the boat that we're going on. But yeah, every boat, you buy it and you find a whole bunch of cans of worms that you weren't prepared for, and it can be pretty demoralizing.
It helps if you can do the work yourself. It makes it a shitload cheaper. We did the calculations on this boat because I got this pretty cheap, and I've saved, I expect about 70 grand just by doing the work myself. That's not including materials. That's just like probably about 70 grand in labor. That's why it would have been sat around. Like nobody would have ever bought it unless it was somebody who could like done the work yourself. Probably the same as Parlay. It might have just sat in that lagoon for the rest of the time, just waiting to dissolve.
Anything wrong with it?
There was nothing wrong with it, to be honest. It just needed a lot of cosmetic work and just bits and bobs here and there. Like a lot of stuff needed changing, but the solid stuff was fine. Like it had been re-rigged. Engine, as soon as I got on board, just checked the engine straight away. That wicked in first time. Generator was good. Had all new like Ray Marine equipment on board, new teak decks. So there was a lot of good stuff about it, but it had just been left in a yard for 3 years and it just looked like shit. Like anybody who walked on it would have just been like, ugh, like I'm not doing anything on that boat.
With your purchase price and all of if you did include your labor and whatever you charge yourself out at, do you think you're still ahead of the game as opposed to just buying one in the same condition that it's in now?
Yeah, definitely way ahead. Well, I spoke to a broker, so I paid 130 for it. If it was the same boat, not cruise ready, but just like out with the charter fleet, you could probably sail it away, but you'd have to spend cash on it. It would have been 200. I've now got like lithiums, panels, all new upholsteries, fabrics. It's ready to circumnavigate now. And a broker turned up last week and said you could sell it for 240, no problem. So like I've spent like 4.5 solid months on it, but by like 4.5 months, I mean like I wake up at 8, I work, I stop for tea, and then I go to sleep like at 12 immediately after just like putting a tool down. So it's been like 12 to 14 hour days. But how
much have you put into it, if you don't mind us asking?
We've got a lot of sponsorships, like as we were talking about before, which has been really cool. But in terms of like how much cash I've actually spent, it's gonna be 30 grand. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
30 grand. Yeah.
That's
and
a good deal.
Yeah, it's a good deal, mate. I mean, I've got no intention of selling it. The best thing about it, and it's like, the same with Parlay now, every inch of the boat that needed to have been rebuilt has been rebuilt by your hands. And you are assured of the quality of that work where, if you were subbing that out, it would cost you a fortune. A lot of people that work on boats actually aren't that great. Like some of them are pretty good, but you come across a fair few cowboys And, you know, it's just luck, isn't it? Like, did the dude working on the engine actually give a shit, or did he not? And that could cause you a problem.
Yeah. Literally the last system or last thing on the boat that we hadn't really touched or replaced or rebuilt was the rigging. And we just did that in Mexico. In a couple of weeks, we were going to put out the episode about that. But
nice.
apart from that, everything else we've either replaced or rebuilt. So
yeah,
know the boat pretty well.
Brand new boat in a way. How much should it cost, like, to do a re-rig on that, out of interest? Because those are bulky wires on a catamaran of that size. Like, if you're just talking about the materials, like, you know, the stanchions, the wires, how much would that cost?
So because we're in Mexico and we couldn't get any of it in Mexico, we had to get it all from the States. And then some of it we got from Selden, but they didn't have things off the shelf. So some of it we got from another rigging company, but it was about 15 grand for all of the standing rigging. Yeah,
it's pretty steep.
Boom or anything like that. That's including getting it down to Mexico, and you got to pay a pretty crazy tax across the border there. Everything's 19%. So yeah, it was about 15 grand, and that was with some solid deals as well.
That was with deals. Shit.
Yeah, like good deals.
Good deals. Yeah, that was with good deals. Jesus. Right. Okay. So I suppose if your average Joe wanted to just rock up and get one of those re-rigged from a rigger, they'd be looking like easy into the 20s.
Easy. Yeah, we went with Staylock fittings as well. So
they're nice.
Really expensive, but you know, more get a longer life out of them.
Yeah, and you can mess around with them yourself as well. Right, so flipping expensive things to re-rig. But I mean, those boats aren't actually that old. I mean, are they coming up to the end of the life with the original rigs, or was it just yours because it had hurricane damage?
Yeah, it's 2012 boat. So it's been over 10 years.
Plus, it's had 2 lightning strikes.
A couple of strikes. And she's
had a
rough life.
Tested the durability of that boat. Cool. All right. I tell you what, just moving on to like future plans. So you started out in the Caribbean, you've done a lot of cruising around there, and then I know that you went a bit further north as well. Now you are in French Polynesia right now, I think, still, yeah? You know, it's always like, let's just take each year as it comes and let's see what happens. But you must have a dream. There must be like some destination where you're like, oh my God, I've got to get there. Like, I've got to do that. What is it?
Yeah, Tortola. Back to Tortola. That's the ultimate destination. That's where it started. That's where it's going to end. After that, I don't really care what happens to the boat, but I have to get this boat around the world.
Nice.
Hit that goal, and there were enough people saying that it couldn't be done for me to want to do it.
Fair.
Those are the people that kind of drive me. I'm a very competitive person, and when someone says you can't do something and you feel like you can, you go for it. Yeah, that's my motto anyway.
There was a guy in the yard here when I was like sanding my holes down because I did like a full topside repaint. It's this old German guy came up. He's like, "Oh, you will never finish this. You will never finish this." I was like, "Fuck you, man! I'm going to finish even harder now." You know what I mean? It's like, you stay there and watch me finish this. Yeah. Have you thought about the route you want to take, like certain stops that you want to make on this circumnavigation?
Yeah, the only like fork in the road, I think, is when we get to somewhere like the Maldives and up through the Red Sea, or is it, you know, down to South Africa. That's apart from that, it's just kind of the milk run, you know, going through Asia, most likely through the Red Sea, Suez Canal, Med, Atlantic, and then you're home. I make that sound a lot easier than it is, but
should be done in 12 months.
Optimistic, yeah. I think I'm in the Mediterranean. I love the Mediterranean. I think it's the best place for cruising in the world. I've never cruised anywhere else, so I don't really have a clue, to be honest. But I'm going to stick with that one. Yeah, I'm strong on that. Wonderfully ignorant.
I reckon I've got to get Caribbean.
Yeah. Well, no, I've sailed there. Like I've crossed the Atlantic and I've sailed around the Caribbean, and but never as like the cruising ground where I've like hopped around islands and stuff like that. But no, I love the Med because it's I'm big into history, so it's just incredible. You know, you can drop anchor and you're in Croatia and you're anchored at the side of a castle that's a couple of thousand years old, or, you know, anchor up in Greece and, you know, you're outside of like, you know, some ancient god's temple or something like that. And it's wicked. It's amazing. It's completely different perspective from just looking at nature.
Polynesian now, the Tuamotu Islands. Absolutely incredible and super challenging navigating around here. We have to like float our chain in most places we anchor in so that it doesn't just get snagged on all the reef and bommies and stuff. Everything's uncharted, so it's all, you know, using Google Earth sometimes to get through somewhere, or a lot of eyeball navigation. It's been really challenging, but it's you know, the beauty of this place is it's priceless.
How untouched is it? Because like there is obviously a lot of tourism in French Polynesia. I mean, there's super yachts there, and it's a pretty active like holiday zone. But like, is there islands you can go to where it does feel like you're in a tropical paradise and there's probably no one around?
Yeah, we're at
right here. Yeah.
You're there. You're at that one, yeah.
We can't even see another boat unless one comes to this afternoon. There's no one here right now. Amazing.
Yeah, I can't wait to get to that part of the world. I'm not that excited about the Caribbean, but yeah, getting over to French Polynesia is like, I've just got to dive in those waters, man. I've got to go scuba diving every morning. I just think it looks perfect.
Yeah, make sure you get a compressor. We don't have a compressor, so we use our tanks up and we're screwed.
Oh, he buggers. I got a mini compressor. It was actually pretty useful. It was like €700. You have to put a fair few filters on it. I can't remember the name of the brand. I just tested it out in my swimming pool, and I've not used it for like 2 years because I haven't really been diving. But no, it's probably about the size of a couple of laptops. It's a heavy thing, but yeah, it's just got all these filters that you attach on, and then it takes a while to charge up a 15-litre tank. It probably takes about 30 minutes or something like that, because it's not like a huge industrial one. But yeah, it works. It's pretty cool. It's cheap and it's small. Like the full size compressors are massive.
Needs a ton of electricity or gas.
Right. Listen, boys, thanks so much for this chat. This has been wonderful. And I wish you the best on this circumnavigation. Hopefully I'll see you in the Med in 10 years. Who knows how long it'll take.
For sure.
Well, we're excited for December anyway. That's going to be epic.
Yeah, mate. I'm really looking forward to it. Like, we've just got some absolute legends coming along, haven't we? We've just got some people like Laura Decker's coming. You know, just some people who've done amazing things on the water. It's going to be brilliant.
Yes, yeah. No, we're super amped about it. And for us to be back on Parlay 2, well, not back on it, but for the first time on Parlay 2, that's just an incredible story for us to tell.
I couldn't believe that. Like when you sent me that message, you were just like, "Oh, Parlay 2 is in the thing." I'm like, I don't know if that's one of the names. And I just thought you were talking about a random boat that was called Parlay 2. And I was like, oh, maybe he just loves the name Parlay or something. And then when you were like, no, it's the same owner as like the boat that we had, I was like, oh my God, what are the chances of that happening? That's crazy.
Yeah. Wow.
Jamie mentioned it like a week or two beforehand, and he just said, I wonder if Bob's boat's going to be in there. And I was like, what are the chances of that? And then look at the list, and Parlay 2, Lagoon 52. I was like, what the hell? Like,
yeah,
we had to be on the boat, man. We had to.
Yeah, it's an amazing story, mate. That's so good. I just think what will be even more awesome is you complete your navigation, go back to Tortola, and then you buy Parlay 2 off Bob.
Yeah.
And he gets Parlay 3. That'll be full circle.
Yeah, I think I snap its bulkhead.
Yeah. Just wait for it to get in a hurricane first.
Yeah.
Nice one. All right. Cheers, boys.
All right. No worries. Cheers, mate.
Cheers for the chat. Yeah.